This is the ERP Advisor.
Today's episode, how AI agents will revolutionize ERP and business operations.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us for another great year of the ERP Advisor podcast. Today, we are going to be discussing how AI agents will revolutionize ERP business operations. Sean Windle is our speaker for today. Sean is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisors Group based in Denver, Colorado. Sean has almost 30 years of experience in the enterprise software industry, helping hundreds of clients across many industries with selecting and implementing a wide variety of enterprise solutions. His podcast, The ERP Advisor, has dozens of episodes with tens of thousands of downloads. And that list just keeps growing and is featured on prominent podcast platforms such as Apple and Spotify, as well as YouTube. On today's call, Sean and I will discuss or explore how AI agents are really revolutionizing business operations and their expected impact on the future of ERP. Welcome, Sean. Thank you for joining me today.
Yep. Great to see you, Rebecca. I love your hair, by the way.
Thank you. Decided to
Yeah.
do something a little bit different.
Yeah, it's
I have a
awesome.
chance to. Thanks. Sean, today's call is going to be kind of interesting. We haven't talked about AI agents, agentic AI, but they're becoming a huge topic and lots of people have questions. And while it's not readily adopted necessarily, and people are still getting used to the generative AI, some of the LLMs, like the crazy things that are flying all over the market, I think it's important to talk about this emerging technology. So just to kick us off and give some background, Sean, what is agentic AI and how does it differ from other AI tools currently on the market?
Well, if you want to find out anything, Rebecca, what do you do these days?
You go to ChatGPT.
That's right. You got ChatGPT, you've got Google Gemini, you've got Anthropic. My gosh, there's Grok. Is it Grok or Grok? Grok.
I think it's Grok.
It's Grok. Okay.
It's
Should
Grok.
ask Grok.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys are probably already, going there. I actually looked also, I even went to Google to just kind of find out sort of kind of what's out there. But I think, our talk, we are real. This is my face. I think we can use secret codes now. I was just reading about this earlier that's sort of what you do where like, so that you don't have like a deep fake, like Charlie, who's like right next to you, was going to come on with my face if I didn't make it here. But you wouldn't know it was him because I wouldn't use some cheesy phrases that I do, like, unequivocally. That's my code
Right.
with you, Rebecca.
Yes,
Don't
I would
use
have to
that phrase.
probably impersonate you if we were gonna
Probably would.
pull it off. So,
That's right. But seriously though, it is pretty cool that this concept of agents and there's even some talk about agents versus an agentic environment and what's the difference. And I will say one thing. It's really interesting how software vendors, oh, I almost used a four-letter word. Um, software vendors make stuff up all the time,
mhm.
like all the time. And like I do think this space is so evolving in real time that you may hear somebody say one thing and another person says something totally different. So as usual, we're going to give you our opinion from kind of what we're seeing in the market and what we're seeing with our customers too, right? There's Ryan out there. I just saw him walk by. We're in a ton of customers. I'll tell you this, none of them are using agents and kind of an agentic platform yet, but they're all asking about them. So I'm going to tell you what we're telling them. And here it is. Excuse me. When you think of an agent, you could think of like an automation. So there's some very specific function within a business dealing with enterprise data, right? It's not like you can have an AI agent like open the front door for you when the UPS or Costco person comes. That we're not there yet, right? You're going to need
Yeah.
the Optimus robots for that, which we're not that far off from. But if you think about an agent that goes and checks on bank reconciliation.
Mhm.
So, what customer payments have hit the bank and looking at the bank data versus what's in the ERP and the financials and matching those up. You can write an agent that could do something like that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I think from the agentic side too, or again, agents, agentic, all kind of being similar, but there's also this concept of like agentic environment being agents working with each other. So
Hmm.
we might have another agent that, so we have that first one that does the bank recon stuff, but then maybe the second one checks to see, what deposits are coming in or like are in flight, right? Like they haven't hit the bank yet. There's all kinds of different sort of, you can almost look at it, it's how old I am, I guess, like Lego blocks. You could build these things up, right? And so they're working with each other. So the bottom line is that when I think about agents, agentic environment, I am thinking about automation. My
Hmm.
mind goes back to business process automation, but that was a long time ago. We tried to figure that out, but it's there. Like we actually have figured it out. It's quite exciting. So I don't know, Rebecca, you look at a lot of different vendors, and what do you see out there in this space?
Yeah, before I dive into that, I just want to let everybody know that if you are looking for a little more guidance on AI, we do have resources in this webinar. There's a resource tab. Click into that. There is an AI download for freely available. You just have to go download it off our website or consultation if you're at that point and you want to talk to somebody. So just for that context, in case you're on this call and Sean's talking about some things like generative AI that you're just like, okay, that's too much. It is written, it is documented. Go check that out. But really, Sean, from my understanding, what I'm seeing the vendors doing is this next level of agentic AI is going to be more autonomous than a lot of the other things that we have seen from the vendors in terms of just data retrieval, generation, those kind of things. This next generation, the goal of the ERP vendors is to create solutions that can make decisions for your business and streamline some of those processes, not to replace your people, but to free them up to do more value-added things, which is what we say all the time. That's really what ERP is for. And really these solutions are more goal-oriented,
Mhm.
goal-directed planning. You can set them up to meet certain objectives versus just the basic automation that we've all come to expect. You could set up your system in order to like, hey, I want you to automatically like check, reconcile these accounts versus an agent might be going in and being like, okay, this doesn't make sense. Here's why it doesn't make sense. And let me recommend to you what else you should be doing. And because the adoption right now is not necessarily quite there, because none of us truly want robots doing our jobs, we don't trust them to completely make those decisions just yet. We are in the phase of suggesting solutions, suggesting mitigations with that human oversight where they go in and say, yeah, this makes sense, or give me more context on why you want me to make that choice.
Mhm.
So it really is within the system, not just the automation, but a tool that's kind of orchestrating what everything else is doing or what other tools in the system when you get into an agentic environment. I saw someone online compare it to a conductor for an orchestra. They're making sure all the pieces are flowing and moving in order for the symphony to sound the way that you
Mhm.
want it to. I think of it like a coach playing sports for so long, like you're there making sure everyone moves and plays the roles that they need to. And that's really going to be this next evolution, I believe, of agentic AI, of AI and what we're moving towards with the vendors. And we're already
Mhm.
seeing a lot of that, but it's usually with the larger vendors, I would say, as opposed to some of the mid-market ones.
Yeah, and that's a good point, really, for everybody that's listening to this. I mean, you're interested in this agentic environment, and what does that mean, and what do I really do with it, right? And the fact of the matter is we're not really sure because the options are literally like limitless. There's so many, but if you look at it as like a piece of automation in your business, I mean, that's not very technical, but that's really kind of what it is. And there's that concept of, like you said, the human in the loop, I think is the phrase that, the agent goes and does something and then it brings it back to the human who decides, A or B or C. Oh, it's C. Okay, good. Boom. Now go execute, maybe make it formal. But these conversations are good to be having now. I would say that the each vendor there's so little standards out there for how agents are built and kind of the interaction that they do. And like when we think about like AP, right, accounts payable, we all kind of have this vision of like, oh yeah, I do it. I don't know, let's say I have to do an RFQ. I have to figure out which vendor I'm going to do. I got to, get the sourcing agreements in place. I have to get purchase orders, and it could be purchase requests. They go first, and there's a purchase order, and then we place that, and then we get the item, and then there's a three-way match, and we have to pay with when we get the receipt documents, blah blah blah, and then bam, we're kind of done, right? Procure to pay process. Like we all kind of know that process. And most ERP systems, and even the specialist kind of procurement best of breed applications are all kind of built around that process. So if you think about something simple like that, then you layer in, wouldn't it be great if, right? If you think that way, like, wouldn't it be great if there was like this, somebody could go do this for me, right? Now you have people that are doing that today. And again, like you said, I don't think the agents are going to quite take over the world because there are real things that need to happen. Like you do need to have a conversation with a human every once in a while. But I don't know. I mean, you could be on a call tomorrow with some vendor and you are actually talking to their AI agent and they can handle 50%, 75% of the scenarios. And then that last 25%, that's where the human in the loop comes in. And so if we can get our people focused on those more complex processes, blah, blah, blah. We've talked a lot about that, Rebecca, and I think we did some nice pieces last year about, you really have to do this automation to keep your culture fit and your people excited and lively about their job to do that last 25%. And productivity goes, through the roof, right? I mean, some of these experts talking about AI are talking about 10x, 100x, even more productivity for mankind. Like it's super exciting. But
Yeah.
if I bring us back to like what's real based on your question, because I know we got more to cover, you can talk to vendors today about what they're offering around agents. And most vendors now, ERP vendors, financials vendors, some of the new AI ERP vendors, we're talking a lot to them, as well as the incumbents, as we're calling them these days. They all have these solutions sort of built into the app, but you do have to customize them and understand what they're doing
Mhm.
before you're able to use them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that leads us into our next question, Sean, which is really around how the software vendors are having to change their strategies in order to accommodate an agentic AI environment or this new era of agentic AI. And I can definitely chime in on this, but from your side, what are some of those observations you're seeing? What are the vendors doing?
Well, this is important. I see your clock behind you. I love that little clock that right there. So it helps me to know where we're at in the call and how likely people on the call are like, oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about by now. So come back to me. If we've lost you, come back. That's what I'm trying to say, because this is a really important thing I'm about to say. And I think you've got some good scenarios I want you to go through too, Rebecca.
Mhm.
But listen, most vendors are going to look at the agents and agentics around how their frameworks are built today.
Mhm.
So what I mean is if you go to an application that's been around for a long time, they're going to think about it like workflow.
Mhm.
If and I'm talking the more incumbent solutions, right? Think of SAP. I think Oracle. If you look at some of the relatively newer apps, I think Acumatica, maybe NetSuite, maybe even Copilot with Business Central and that, you're going to see a little bit more of what kind of looks like business process automation, where, like you said, we don't not only do a three-way match, but we have thresholds that we can put in that say if it's within plus or minus 5%, go ahead and approve it. Well, we'll have an agent that does that.
Right.
And then there's sort of the next generation of ERP applications, which is great because it keeps us in business even more, makes it more confusing for people. I'm sorry, it's true, guys, but it's kind of true. Like, holy mackerel, like, are you going to bet your bank on, an ERP vendor that's been in business for 2 years? Like, you gotta look at them. Like we're having to do
Right.
it too. We're having to recreate what we do and spend a ton of time to figure this out. When they think about the agent, I think they think about it more from like the LLM idea of like, I'm going to go into ChatGPT and, can you tell me, can you create an agent that goes out and, not just does a 5% check on the three-way match, but can also tell me which vendors are consistently outside of that threshold and what's the products that we're buying from them and what's the likelihood that they're overcharging us versus what's out in the market today and make it an agent.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty cool. Like that would be amazing to do that, right? And you
Right.
can generate that actual kind of code and put an agent in place that can do it, and then you can train that agent to continue to do those kinds of things for you, right? So the newer ERP vendors sort of are built with that concept in mind, with their data structures, with their interface, with everything, right? So it's pretty cool. Now, I think the incumbent vendors are going to get there also, and they have a ton more money, frankly. And here is the most important thing I'm going to probably say on this call is that when it comes to this agentics, you really need to have a vendor that really understands business processes
Hmm.
and really has, I think, lots of experience of the kinds of questions that you're going to ask so that they're not only training the model that they're using as the underlying a large language model, but also they're structuring your data that hopefully the LLM is only using instead of everybody
Yeah.
else's. To be able to like think with those concepts of what you're going to ask it and even build them in advance. But I think it's a lot like reports where, oh, I need reports out of the box. Every customer that we work with says, I need these kinds of reports. You're like, great. 9 times out of 10, the vendor doesn't give a report exactly like that. Of course, it has a balance sheet, P&L, AR, aging stuff, da da da. But if you want to see your customers in this way and that way, well, you just give us the data and we throw it over to Excel, right? That kind of concept is the same thing here in this agentic environment where they're going to build out some agents, but chances are they're not going to be very good. Like exactly what you need. So then you're going to have to learn how to customize and work with this. But if it's through an LLM, you literally just say what I just did there. No, no, no. I don't want the threshold of 5%. It needs to be at 3%. And again, show me which vendors are constantly outside of it and recommend to me what I should do with these vendors.
Absolutely.
So that's a lot, but there's some ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in order to achieve all of that, Sean, you touched on it a little bit or alluded to it that there is going to be some re-architecturing that the incumbent vendors are going to have to do in order to keep up. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot being done by the Microsofts, the Oracles, for the Azure products, OCI, in order to build out that infrastructure, but it's different. And when you have a platform, it's even like the legacy platforms that weren't built to go to the cloud and had to be re-architectured in order to go to the cloud. We're going through that again, where the systems are seeing some revamps. And as a result, with some of the things you're talking about, the vendors are really putting a focus on the user experience, the user interface, in order to change how customers are interacting with their system on top of the re-architecturing. And what you were saying right now, agents, there is a level of having to understand the code and putting those in place and the workflows. But the
Yeah.
next level for that is this really like what they're calling like AI orchestration platforms. Big term kind of encompasses a lot of things, but the goal, and we're seeing this in a lot of the vendors. I mean, I know we've seen Nextworld do some things like that. Oracle's done some things. Microsoft, like the names that you would expect to hear, they have these AI agent platforms where companies can go in and create these workflows, create the agents in a low code, no code environment. Meaning you don't have to have that expertise necessarily where you're having to generate that. You can test it and have somebody maybe with a little more of a technical background actually check it to make sure it's doing what you need it to be doing. But the future is ease of use. And whichever vendor gets there first and allows people to use these is going to gain a lot of market share with companies,
Mhm.
especially in the mid-market who don't have those IT teams. A lot of the companies we talk to, they want to use agentic AI, but they don't have somebody to just sit there and code all day in order to create
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And Sean, I don't know, you're on the consulting side. I know from an analyst perspective, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing is the pricing models are changing as well
Mm.
in order to kind of reflect a consumption-based value so that companies can like pay as they go versus what they're paying for with their ERP. Is that something we're seeing reflected in contracts just yet?
No, not even close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's we're a ways away from that. When you talk about consumption, though, we do have vendors that do charge us from or do charge customers from more of like a transaction basis, right? Like
Mhm.
the number of transactions that you're doing in certain areas and it's so complex for customers that they sort of have to say, okay, well, which transaction are you going to do the most? And about what is that going to be? And that's going to determine what we're going to charge for your software based on, how much resources you're consuming with our IT infrastructure. But most vendors are doing by, users still or by modules. But I think that I mean, if I'm on this call, right, and I'm the folks that are listening to this, and I'm like, what do I do with this right now? I mean, you really should listen to what Rebecca said there. You can rewind that and really get that concept that there will be agents just like anything else in technology, right, that are super, super focused and very, very specialized. And, everybody on this call is super busy. You have so many things that you're doing in a day. Are you going to go take the time to go get and acquire a very specific agent for one function within your business, right? It's really process automation. And we saw the same things with RPA, with robotic process automation, business process automation, where, either might be a process or two, right, in your business that or your nonprofit that is so transactional, that has so much volume to it, it's so repetitive that you may go and get something, an agent just to do that piece. It's no different than getting a procure to pay solution, bill.com on the invoicing, that side, or even Avalara for tax, right? There's a lot of solutions. I can throw out a bunch of names that you all would recognize that do these little pieces within a business process, and they've gotten really good at it. They made a ton of money on that, and everybody then gets all these apps and all these renewal contracts, and they get confused and they call us. So thank you for calling us. We're here, but seriously, so I don't think it's going to be a while before you're out like getting an agent per se and bringing that in. I think it's going to be more using apps that have pre-built agents. And then we're all going to learn how to interact with these agents more. And like you said, the interface needs to make sense to us. But of the demos that we've seen recently, we've seen probably 5 or 6 different ERP vendors showing us sort of agents in the environment. I can tell that the person who's demoing really knows the data structure really well. And they know they've trained and they've interacted with their agents a lot. So they know exactly what to put in. So it makes it look real easy. So, you want to talk about confusion in demonstrations, like you really have to be aware, like, oh my gosh, am I really going to be able to do that? And the answer is no, you're
Yeah.
not. Because what I see is that the solutions consultant really understands like the 4 or 5 different layers of like the data structure, the business logic, even the interface itself, like, oh, I go here and I go there, what other kinds of like alerting and sort of like scheduling and sort of, basic kind of automation that's in the platform. And then they understand the business problem that they're trying to solve. And that's an unusual person, right? That's 5 different points that specific consultant, the solutions consultant, or demo jockey, used to call him, knows that you probably don't. So,
Right.
so I think the thing to do here, though, and I remember a couple of years ago, Rebecca, we were at a Financial Executives International meeting, and we said this, like, you need somebody on your team who's curious and interested.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get Natalie there. She's almost there on our team. That wants to build out and start working with these agentic tools so that, you're learning and you're growing so that by the time you're like ready, you're not behind. You've got to find somebody who's curious, whose mind works from a system standpoint and knows the data structures, right? Like Natalie knows in our professional service automation solution, how all of our projects and time, all these things are structured. And now you give her a tool where, she can answer, she can ask it questions, but see, she can also check it too to know if she's getting back a hallucination, right?
Right.
I did just say the word hallucination. If you haven't heard that one, you can AI it instead of Google it, versus what's real. She knows. And so then she can build the agent out and then give it to the rest of the company to use. And we know that it works. People are using data that makes sense. Wouldn't it be great if there was somebody out there who was truly independent, truly objective, and who really cared about what you needed? That's ERP Advisors Group. That is exactly what we do. We have a proven methodology that'll take you through the needs analysis, selection, implementation, and even optimization, where you'll go from being confused and upset and scared and unsure all the way through to having successful software that does exactly what you need it to do. We'd like to offer you a free consultation. Click on the button down below and let's spend a few minutes, even 10, 15 minutes, and talk about your project. And I bet you'll be surprised. There'll be some things we can do for you, even over that call, that would help you, much less talk about how we could work with you over the duration of your project. And just know you don't have to do this project alone. You don't have to face these confusions on your own. It's exactly what ERP Advisors Group is here for, and we look forward to helping you through your process.
Leads into the next point, which I think is why people are really here, Sean. And I think we'll kind of roll into both of these topics, but starting out, in what ways can businesses actually apply AI agents to improve their processes? And then we'll go into ways businesses are actually doing so. So
Yeah.
in what ways are you seeing businesses could be benefiting from AI agents?
Yeah, I think if you think about, the office of the CFO, we're often talking to those people, right? And if you think about the core processes of, again, procure to pay, there's order to cash, record to report, there's the asset life cycle, we'll leave the employee life cycle, we'll leave manufacturing out and projects and all that. But just look at those four processes. There's tons of stuff that's happening around procurement for sure. And there has been for a while, but I think it's really starting to come in, especially when you look at some of the best of breed vendors around a procure to pay life cycle. So like we're even using like Bill, right? And some other tools too. And we talked to a lot of the Topalti is another really good one in the NetSuite space. There's many other kinds of solutions, but they're building in agents today. Like they're there. Now you might not know that they're called agents, but the automation pieces are there. And so now they're surfacing up the ability for you to change those things. Again, the matching process is a great example of that. Or even, finding vendors that we've worked with that offer similar products if we have thousands of vendors, and rendering which ones we should work with at any given time. The record to report, though, is probably the biggest. I think that we're seeing the concept that if you look at like a Rillet, especially, is really all about the 0-day close, right? That's a business process that they're like hammering the market on, 0-day close. And you're using agents. That's doing things like bank recons faster and amortization faster, reversal of journal entries faster, like all the basic stuff that somebody has to do in a close process, like it's automated, which I love that because the app is learning, especially as you go through each month end close, building those automations in so it's there. So those are just a couple of things I can think of, but I know you've researched quite a few too.
Yeah, financial close is definitely the big one. And I know Rillet, that's what they're really pushing home about what they can do. But a lot of the other incumbent vendors are also releasing solutions around 0-day close. And that's eventually the goal. I would say we're not quite there yet with the 0-day close. There's still efforts that need to be made. There's still human intervention, but it's very interesting to see that the agents are able to do some high-level anomaly detection, shoot that back over to the CFO and say, hey, this is what I detected. You need to review this. And it takes them back to the journal entry so that they can trace back and see what they need to be doing. So that's been really exciting. And then also vendor management, cash flow, like some of the things you mentioned in terms of the accounts, really giving recommendations on, hey, we should be purchasing from this vendor at this time because you can get a discount. Or historically, this vendor hasn't given us high quality products, plus the price point's higher. We need to be taking a look at this account in order to make better decisions and better allocate our cash to the right vendors, the right suppliers. But an aside that we don't honestly talk about that much from an ERP's perspective is customer service. And that's becoming much bigger and a much bigger focus for agentic AI. Salesforce is kind of leading the charge on that in terms of how these AI agents are actually interacting with customers through websites, how they are upselling, something nobody really wants to do when you're a salesperson and trying to get them to buy more things, especially from an e-com perspective, selling directly within the product, meeting them where they're at, especially now that companies can buy directly within ChatGPT. It's really changing the way that salespeople will interact with the system, and then ultimately those agents will have to speak back to the general ledger and talk about those sales. So that's a big area that companies could be benefiting from, but I do think it's larger companies right now, especially from a Salesforce perspective, where they're using tools like Slackbot, which actually was just announced this week, that companies can use with directly within Slack. They can talk to their own little individual agent who takes the context of your conversation, pulls information from across the business, and then ultimately makes recommendations or asks you if you want them to act on whatever your recommendations are. So we're seeing a lot of these things come to fruition, and lots of companies are going to benefit from that, especially because Slackbot is going to be directly within Slack and won't change the way companies interact with their system. It's just a new feature. But realistically, how many companies, especially in the mid-market, are we going to see start immediately latching onto these tools?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, Sean, what are businesses actually like currently utilizing? Are you seeing our customers even utilize from an AI agent perspective or AI perspective?
They're really looking to their vendors right now. And that is absolutely, at 30 minutes in, the major recommendation here, I think our white paper sort of lays this out too, that you must talk to your existing software vendors to understand sort of what they're offering and what their customers are doing. If you want to be the alpha or the beta, that's fine. You can be there. Like even talking with one of our vendors recently, Natalie on our team was going through some of the scenarios. They're like, "Whoa, we love this. Like, will you test this with us and go
Mhm.
through it?" And absolutely, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think the most important thing here, though, is that um, especially in processes like the customer service side, we don't have a lot of folks that are looking at customer service apps that are probably on these podcasts, but just as a
Mhm.
great example, because it's everybody has the consumer experience, right?
Yes.
Um, I remember what it was. I was canceling a subscription service, and it was all through a bot. And
Yeah.
I've had to cancel this service before, and the last time I did it was through a person, and it was terrible before. It took
Right.
forever. And then I was able to use the bot, and I put in the information. It was done in like 4 minutes. But that was a cancellation process. I think the reason why it used to be hard before was because the vendor didn't want you to cancel.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
you have to be sensible, of course, about what automation you're looking to do, and you're going to have to balance between, maybe your AI analyst, your AI change management person, or whatever we're going to call these AI people, like we call like all the data. I remember going through all the analytics and stuff. I'm like, what do you call these people? A data scientist. Like, okay, we need like the AI gurus. Like everybody needs an AI guru, whatever it is. That person's going to be talking about automation galore, but you also have to just keep in mind, like, no, I actually don't want to automate that portion. I want to kind of make it harder for people to cancel. That's just an example. But what I was trying to get to is that your vendors today, I don't care who they are. They have AI solutions right now. And you
Yes.
should be talking to those vendors for sure. And you
Hmm.
should see what they have. Now, if you're at the point where you do need to change software, and maybe you're in the software industry, and your zip code starts with a 9, meaning you're in California and you're in the Bay Area, like you're probably going to be looking at these innovative, newer solutions because you're more risk tolerant, whether you think you are or not, you are. And you're bringing on an app that maybe doesn't have a decade of use of just getting beat on.
Right.
um, it doesn't have that in a newer app, but do you need that, right? So then go to some of these newer vendors and either them or even with your existing vendors, like they're going to drive your use of agents. And of course, there's going to be customers that are, again, alpha customers, or they have, product advisory committees or whatever that are giving feedback. There are going to be tools like if you look at what NetSuite's doing with their MCP integration with
Hmm.
Anthropic, and I think OpenAI, maybe it's just Anthropic. Is that right?
It's Anthropic
Both?
right
It's
now.
Anthropic. Yeah.
Um, OpenAI,
Yeah.
I'm sure, is mixed in there with the Azure thing, but
Yeah. I know we've spent most of the time we've spent with NetSuite has been on the cloud side with
Mhm.
Anthropic. And you can see how they are the people within NetSuite are building out the models. And the questions always come up about, well, can I get that? Can I get that
Mhm.
instruction from you that you just put into Claude? And it's kind of like, no, like we don't really have the ability to share that yet, but we're super close. So, you're going to be relying on your vendors for agents. Like
Right.
that's it. And of course, if you have your AI guru who loves to play with this technology and has the time, get them going, get them understanding what's available and what's out there for sure. You'll probably get some AI driven emails in your inbox from AI vendors that are doing just AI things in teeny tiny areas. When you go to trade shows, especially on the product side, we have a lot of people, wholesale distributors, manufacturers, folks that listen to our podcast. If that's in your category, go to the trade shows and see, there's always those innovative, partners that you have or similar based companies that they just love technology. The owner's totally into technology. It's, oh, I use this bot over here and I use that. Listen to that. Like,
Mhm.
understand what's going on. I mean, we have some insight into that for sure. And for all of our clients on a specific project, depending on your vertical, if you're industrial manufacturer versus food, there are different kinds of bots that are out there, different kinds of agents that base platforms that you can go for. So I don't have a specific recommendation. It's just really look and work with your vendors today and get used to this concept. But I said this. I never did say this because I was big time into process automation, business process automation years ago, and even me doing it with my background and doing it day in and day out is still too complex.
Mhm.
So this agent world is going to be complex. So then you are going to need people on your team that have the time and the interest to put into this. So you at the top may be saying, we need to be in an agentic environment, da 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 da. And then you really have to assess your people and say, is there somebody who really gets this, who really understands the data structures of our current
Mhm.
application, who really understands business process, and understands how we could automate here, right? And if you don't have that person, again, your vendor's going to have some stuff, leverage that for sure. If you do, then go and experiment a little bit more for sure. But this is more about your people. And I'm not talking about we're going to eliminate all the people, blah, 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 whatever. We're not even close to that. I mean, just like set that aside. If somebody's saying that, they're what's called a fear monger, and you probably want to fire them. No, you're going to fire. You're going to take all of our jobs. You know what? Actually, probably should take yours because you're freaked out about the wrong things right now. I need
Yeah.
to be focused on more production, frankly. But it's a little raw, but it's kind of true. But the bottom line is that what's real for most people is work with your vendor, do the demos, and you can watch on the demo what did that person do that they didn't just talk about and think for
Mhm.
yourself, okay, can my company, do I have the resources to do these things or not? And if you do, you should be checking it out and playing with it. Go to the software conferences, right? We're going to go to Acumatica coming up here, and we're going to dig in on some of their agents that they're building around so we really see it for ourselves.
Definitely. And Sean, you kind of touched on the last point. So just kind of a couple more things I would like to add for anybody on the call who might be preparing their business for AI adoption, whether that be agentic, generative, anything else that your vendor might be doing. Beyond just educating yourself, like do determine your readiness for AI. Start with that. Determine if your business, like Sean said, can handle what the vendor is showing you. If you have those resources, is your data clean enough? Like, is your business ready to take that on? And there's a scale for sure. You might not be ready for a full scale agentic AI takeover, but you might be ready for some different AI automation things within your system. And by doing that, figuring out where you're at, you can determine what options you have and how that aligns with what the vendor is offering you. And then ultimately get your people ready for change. And as long as you're setting those expectations early and making sure that you're prepared for what your organization needs, you can set yourself up for success, regardless of the AI solution you're selecting. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, we do have a little bit of an AI readiness tool that
Hmm.
we're putting together, and we'll make sure to make that available to folks too when we've got it. But it's very simple. There's just a couple criteria that you have to look at. And if you're there, it's time to go all in, right? But if you're not, you still have the responsibility to find out, like I said, with what your vendors are doing today, and they'll love to show it to you. So go check it out. And listen, you guys listen to us. I mean, my goodness, we've been yapping for 40 minutes. we'd love to hear from you and what you're actually seeing too. So get back to us. You can do info@erpadvisorsgroup.com. You can always send us an email there. But we'd love to hear what's really going on out there as well for you all.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. And again, reminder for anybody on the call, we do have those resources. So if you would like to speak with us, even if it's just to get in contact with us, fill out that form, go to our website, email us, like Sean said, info@erpadvisorsgroup.com. Sean and I both are available. Sean at erpadvisorsgroup.com, Rebecca.mccabe@erpadvisorsgroup.com. We're more than happy to answer any questions or pass along content. And thank you again for joining us. Be sure to join us for our next webinar, which is scheduled for Thursday, February 12th. Fall back in love with your ERP, best practices for implementation and optimization, where we will address how businesses can fall back in love with their enterprise software by giving it a little TLC. It'll be a fun event around Valentine's Day, so please go to our website, erpadvisorsgroup.com, for more details and to register. ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software advisory firms. ERP Advisors Group advises mid to large size businesses on selecting and implementing business applications from enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, human capital management, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor. Thank you again for joining us.